So let's teach you all not only how to restore the environment, but also restore yourselves and then give back to the communities in which you once harmed.
This episode was originally released under the podcast titled Teaching and Learning Theory versus Practice. This rebooted episode has been migrated to Teaching and Leading with Dr. Amy and Dr. Joy. I am Dr. Amy Viaclia, Director of Educator Preparation.
And I am Dr. Joy Patterson, Chief Diversity Officer. Our podcast addresses issues through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion, along with solutions for us to grow as educators.
So join us on our journey to become better teachers and leaders. So let's get into it.
Good morning, Dr. Amy.
Good morning, Dr. Joy. How are you today?
I'm doing great. We're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects today. We're going to talk about STEM and why it's so important and kind of what's going on in the STEM arena today. According to the U.S. Department of Commerce, STEM occupations are growing at 17% compared to any other occupation at about 9.8%. And STEM degree holders like myself, we tend to earn more money. I don't know about that part, but people with STEM degrees, they tend to earn more money. They just play such a key role in our economy. And especially we're talking about global warming all the time. They just play such a key role. I started, Amy, out of college. My first position was as a research microscopist. And if you don't know what a research microscopist is, Cher played a research microscopist in Silkwood. Do you know that movie? Are you old enough to even know that movie?
No, I don't know that one.
So she played a research microscopist, and my job, this was during Desert Storm. I don't know if you even remember, I'm dating myself. And my job was to isolate plutonium and uranium particles and things like that. So really, really important job. But that was my first job out of college. It was easy actually to get a job in my field in STEM.
Well, and something else I'm really eager to talk about are alternate pathways to get into STEM fields.
Yeah, that's exciting because I started in college. There's so many alternate pathways, not just for students, but for adults too. So I think we should talk about, what does STEM mean? So STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. So most people are kind of accustomed to that now, but STEM is everywhere. One concern that I do have about the STEM field is, are we doing enough to prepare our students for STEM fields? Some schools have added coding as early as kindergarten, which is great. But I'd like for us to get to a place where even in our homes, STEM is really important. Like you teach your kids how to cook, how to clean, do their finances, all those things that we think are essential for their life. But so is STEM. My other concern, which I want us to talk about today, is the disparity of STEM initiatives, especially when we talk about marginalized schools and communities. I'm looking forward to us talking to one such person today who has activated STEM.
Absolutely. Dr. Andrew Hines is with us from Greencorps Chicago. Dr. Hines holds a PhD in community psychology and a master's in geography with a concentration in community, urban, and economic development. And he is an Air Force veteran. Born and raised in Chicago, Drew graduated from Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences. His ancestral roots are in agriculture and teaching. He felt that those legacies drove him to his mission that he now champions today. Drew oversees staff, consultants, and is responsible for managing the planning, operational, and administrative functions for the City of Chicago's Greencorps Chicago program. Drew is passionate about workforce development and social service programs that assist underserved populations and communities to become more economically stable. Drew loves learning about African American ethnography and is a champion of social justice and we're going to talk about that today. I believe he is a social justice grandbaby. So welcome to our show, Dr. Hines.
Thank you, Amy. How you doing? Hey, Dr. Joy, how are you?
Good morning, Dr. Hines. Drew, good to see you this morning. I want to start with, because you have such an amazing story. As Dr. Amy said, you are social justice babies, but tell us about your beginning. Tell us how this started, what made you the person that you are, and also your beginnings when you got into urban agriculture.
Okay, so like I said, I was born and raised literally in the Black Baptist Church. My grandparents, from edicts and direction of Martin Luther King and all the CLC and the SNCC organizations down in the South, came to Chicago along with Jesse Jackson and my great uncle, the Reverend Dr. Clay Evans, started Operation Breadbasket. So Breadbasket predates Rainbow Push, predating Operation Push. So that was back way, before I was born. So that kind of ancestral DNA kind of came up during the generations. And then my mom was actually the Jesse Jackson's first secretary, Operation Breadbasket. It's like a fraternal plumb line there. And then what I did was my grandparents were raised on a farm. And then when I was 15, I attended the Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences. It was kind of crazy because I was just, throwing corn around and playing in the dirt, stuff like that. And didn't really understand the complexity of what I did, complexity of farming and urban ag. But I learned horticulture, I learned botany, I learned arbory. You learn how, soil composition is soils, not dirt, it's soil. So the soil composition,
Right.
We all call it dirt, but it's soil
Right.
composition and how the breakdown of it, how the nitrogen, and the crop rotation and, this, that, just starting just to understand the complexity of it. And then went to University of Tennessee. I actually studied behavioral science there, but I always had a yearning towards agriculture because my grandma had one of those victory gardens back in during the time when they had the World War II. And that was my mother's side. Now my father's side, the sixth great grandfather, which is called the Daddy Hines, from which I'm named after, he was actually a farmer in Powell, Texas. And then his wife, which is Cecilia Joanne, she actually had graduated in 1887 from Selma University. So, I showed you, you saw the commencement.
Yes. That was amazing.
Right. So I was trying to figure out why this tug of agriculture and tug of teaching were pulling on me. So that was that ancestral stuff, kind of DNA. It's powerful, what I'm saying, coming through. I feel like, we have to definitely understand nature from that standpoint. But so that kind of, doing psychology and teaching at city colleges and all this other stuff, I was given the opportunity to head Greencorps. And I was like, I said, this is something I really want to do. So it was a natural fit and a natural progression for me to be where I'm at right now. So I feel like, that ancestral DNA, that those ancestral spirits tugging on me, my education, my social justice roots, kind of all encompassed to what I'm doing right now.
So, you have really big shoes to fill. You do have this ancestral DNA to do the work that you're doing, but you were in law enforcement at one time.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
How did you connect the dots? How did you go from law enforcement to urban agriculture? Did you went back to school?
Right.
What sparked all that?
So my granddad, he was a policeman on the railroad. Actually, he was a Pullman porter before he did that. So, he was A. Philip Randolph.
Yeah.
They were real good friends. I'm like, A. Philip Randolph, wow, And then all his friends and buddies were, law enforcement and stuff like that. So I thought that was my natural progression to go. But then what I started to see was I was actually good at kind of mentoring and good at kind of helping, the young guys, because I would just see guys being locked up. And it's like, man, they were really good individuals, really good guys, they just were misguided, misdirected. So ended up, getting hurt on the job, and I said, okay. And sometimes you got to listen to those ancestral DNA knocking at you. So they did that, and it was like, geography. Wow, okay. And I've always loved geography, the dynamics of nature. So I kind of just went into that, started helping people, but I concentrated in community economic and urban development. So how can we take what we have and then use it and use the tools and use the nature and environment around us to be able to make our lives different? Because that's really all geography is understanding spaces and how people take and react, but also interact in those spaces to make, produce life. Because all community is a subset of people with like-minded interests.
Right.
And that's what it is. So yeah, so that's kind of what happened. And I just haven't turned back. And so I was on one side of it, say, okay, well, I'm dealing with the issues and the problems. So I said, okay, well, let me jump over here and let me help solve some of these issues, or help be a change maker, or be a part of the solution. At one point in time, that I was actually being a punitive person in terms of we got the end result. So I wanted to be at the beginning of the line. So it kind of helped to kind of minimize those end results of guys, going into the criminal justice system and stuff like that. So.
Well, you were talking about being led, being called, maybe that head position at Greencorps, and it had to have been the mission of Greencorps that called you. Tell us more about the goal that Greencorps has for Chicago.
So Greencorps has 4 unique strategies of teaching people: landscape, ecological restoration, tree care, and green infrastructure. We try to help people with barriers to employment. Some of those barriers are educational, some of those barriers are social, economic, criminal justice involved, and just try to teach and give them a good example, but also teach them about the environment. And we do have probably 70 to 85% of the people that come through Greencorps have criminal justice involvement, okay? And then, we have this concept now, which is restorative justice. So now you can have environmental restorative justice, because a lot of these individuals, they actually have done damage to the environment, and not necessarily physical damage, but physical and social, damage. So now we say, okay, clean slate, here we are. So let's teach you all not only how to restore the environment, but also restore yourselves, and then give back to the communities from which you once harmed.
That is really nice. I like that restorative justice approach on both sides. Restore the earth, restore yourself. And there's a lot to be learned. I imagine that's therapy.
Yes, it is.
That's part of therapy for them. Can you talk more about who you employ and maybe give us an example? And also when you employ them, are they earning salaries or are they volunteering?
I went to the University of Tennessee, and our motto is volunteer. So I don't believe in volunteering anymore. I've done that type of work. I've been in the military, and I believe in volunteer for that. So I don't believe in volunteering no more. I believe in going to pay. I volunteer for king and country and everybody else. I'm done volunteering. And I just believe that if you pay a person a good wage, and then they will be more inclined to work better if you do it. Now I get it, we have the kumbaya moments, and it's good to volunteer, but if you want to change the community, you have to pay people. You have to pay them a living wage. That's what America is about. But so we do, like I said, don't limit ourselves to the disaggregated and disinvested communities, because we take everybody, but we would definitely want to take that underserved, disaggregated person that maybe are on the outliers in society, and kind of bring them in and say, well, hey, look at it from a different lens. Look at it from, say, hey, you learn these skills. So as you're learning these skills, you're getting paid minimum wage, which is $15 an hour. You also are kind of creating that social mobility for you and your family and your loved ones, and kind of taking you on a different pipeline than maybe people in your family were. So we try to encourage, and we also teach soft skills, and try to teach and try to create or reinforce the holistic approach. not just paying them, but teaching them soft skills, teaching them hard skills. And we're actually working on real world projects, like real world projects. If you go out now, I could tell you there's some places, you know, in Inglewood that we worked on, places in the Chicago Park District that we worked on, places in Cook County Forest Preserve that we worked on. I mean, I didn't know there was a Sweetwoods, you know, I didn't even know myself in Alaska. I'm like, real, wow, it's out there by Glenwood where I used to skate, you know, so it's like, wow. So it's just understanding, you know, Chicago, and then as a geographer, I understand Chicago. But in terms of as an ecological restorer, or even getting into nature and the natural spaces in which Chicago is known for, it's like, wow. So you just learning about it, and then you start to appreciate the land. It was freezing in Texas, you know, so climate change is real. You know what I'm saying? It really is real. We have the polar vortex, we have the El Ninos and El Niñas, and you know, the different weather patterns. So I want population, especially an underserved and underrepresented population, to understand, because it's less than 1% of minorities in this field, less than 1%. Okay, so I just want to just have an impact and be able to actually get into a field, not have all the traditional restrictions and traditional barriers. Then they can come in and say, hey, do this, and then actually have a real meaningful change in their lives in doing it.
You talked about social mobility, and having skills, having training really impacts the social mobility that one can experience.
Right.
Tell us about the education piece that might be at play too, because having some college credit or some kind of college background can often also propel people forward.
Right. So what we're doing now is we're in the process of two different pathways. From the Department of Labor, we're in the process of making Greencorps an apprenticeship qualified program during the Department of Labor, which gives the impact along the same lines of being a pipe fitter, a plumber, electrician, a carpentry. So that pathway. But then we're also working with City College of Chicago, specifically Wright College, to get the ICCB certification, which is the Illinois Community College Board certification, that our program can give college credit towards individuals who go through the program. And I know me, I did finish undergrad, you know, teenager, 18 to 24, but I know as an adult, going to school was very challenging with kids, you know, and I mean, it was really challenging. So you want to kind of say, okay, well, kind of go through this program and then maybe get college credit, and it can kind of learn on the pathway so that I can kind of get my associate's degree. And as you, like you said, social mobility, Dr. Amy, and upward mobility. So you get associate's degree, a couple more years, you get a bachelor's degree, and so on and so forth. So we start at $15 an hour, but then once you can go to the Chicago Park District or go to the Cook County Forest Preserve, and then start making, you know, $18, $19 an hour. And then you get some more education, college credits, you can kind of start getting into those middle living wage and middle income wage gaps, and then even go higher, professional, you know, where you're making some real good money and really you're changing the intergenerational trajectory.
Before you came on, we were talking about that people actually in STEM field and STEM degrees, they make more money
than
other professions. I mean, there's a wealth of employment out there if you're in a STEM field. Can you talk to us about how Greencorps is funded and about the sustainability of Greencorps?
Okay, so Greencorps has been around since 1994. So it's been around for 27 years.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Right, yeah, and that's the thing, and we're actually doing some branding on getting us more notoriety and more branding out into the public so they know who we are.
Right, that's how I connected with you. I saw it and I said, "Oh, I want to do that. I want to volunteer. I grew up in Inglewood. I want to do that."
Right, and just in case, we actually are building 4 urban farms in Inglewood right now as we speak, and one of them are always complete. It's at 58th and Halsted. If you want to go by and take a look at it, we did all that. Also, in terms of hiring, we've been around for like 27 years, and we've started a program with the urban gardens and teaching communities about urban gardening and teaching communities how to take these vacant lots and transform them into a beautiful place, a place of, you know, a peaceful place, but also a place that actually works for them. You have the vegetables and, of course, in the wintertime, no, but definitely starting to how to remediate the land, how to grow the vegetables, teaching classes how to grow raised beds, how you take the soil and how you can transform the soil and use the soil, maybe lacking in this mineral, or take this over here and use this mineral. So just kind of just teaching people in certain communities who probably have never farmed, who have never even had a class in horticulture or botany, and teaching them really how to, self-sustain and being more sustainable. Now they have these pop-up vegetable gardens, they have these pop-up farmers markets, and I don't know if you guys know, but vegetables are high in in stores right now.
Yes.
Commodity. So what we want to do is we want to teach generations, connecting the big mamas and the grandmamas who used to back in the day to the young people. Say, well, this is how you do it. This is how you grow. This is how, and vegetables are good for you. Green vegetables are good for you. Even with my own kids, and teaching them like, dang, it's nasty. But when you start to learn the process and they start to respect the process, start to understand the process, it's like, oh, this is pretty cool. And the science behind that, because this is a science. It is a science. I know you guys know, well, probably around the same age, but like.
Why, thank you.
Yeah, 35, of course, So, everybody thought that George Washington Carver was just the peanut guy, but he was a botanist. He was a scientist. He understood how to take the nitrogen in the soil and put with the peanut and put nitrogen back in the soil and the crop rotation, and start to how, well, you can't grow vegetables here, but you grow there after you till the soil and take the minerals, put them back in the soil. And how if you plant this year tomatoes over here and you plant corn over here, then guess what? If you plant rutabagas over here, then what tomatoes are, because the tomatoes and the remnants of what tomato gave off in the soil will make the rutabagas grow. So that's a whole complex science of just botany and horticulture. It's like just amazing once you really get into it. So just teaching on that level. So we're getting back into the community this year. And trying to kind of just get people to eat healthier. We know about, like the United States has the highest mortality rate, highest obesity rate. So we have to really look at like the food systems, the health systems, how can we be a change maker with those, on a small scale. And then if we use a small scale, kind of scale up, and hopefully we'll be able to make an impact.
I am an English teacher, and you are getting me excited about science. It's fascinating listening to your excitement about vegetables and growing and knowing the science behind this. It has to really impact the people that you work with. And what I'd love to hear is a success story. Where do people work after their involvement? You mentioned the Park District.
So we have actually a couple. We have one gentleman now, we do on the segment we did on Channel 7. He did some serious federal time, and he went through the program about 7-8 years ago. And then he went on to he went from Greencorps on to a different agency out in the south suburbs and made some really good money through a grant they had out there. Jermaine ended up coming back, and then he's been working as a crew supervisor. And now he's actually going to be promoted to a project supervisor now, within Greencorps after he came back. And then there's another gentleman, and Henry did some serious time for a serious crime. And he came through Greencorps. Now he works for the Cook County Forest Preserve, and he's making some really good money. He's at the professional level now. He's making some professional wages, and he actually is like really, really good. And he comes back and he speaks to some of the or the new trainees. But then also we have 3 or 4 people that we've actually hired on that have been with Greencorps that were trainees. We've impacted a lot of people in underserved communities.
So we are talking to Dr. Andrew Lee Hines, Dr. Drew, part of the Dr. Amy, Dr. Joy, Dr. Drew show. We're talking about everything. We have talked about STEM. We've talked about urban agriculture. We've talked about eating healthy. We've talked about restorative justice. We've just hit on so many points. And it all kind of revolves around, you're just perfect for this mission and for this job. Your background, starting as a child in your family for social justice, your career in criminal justice, and the ability to relate to some of the people that you're working with and to catapult them to the next level, to give them opportunities and working in agriculture. I mean, it's just a perfect match for you. You were built for this, and we're so happy to be talking to you today.
Thank you.
Earlier, Amy and I, we were talking about kind of some ebbs and flows in STEM fields. And at some time, it feels like it was kind of a fad that everybody's on this track to do STEM. And then you have these down periods. But STEM, you know, there's this huge need. It's here to stay. And I was just wondering, with Greencorps, how do you respond to such a need? How do people find you? How do people get involved in what you're doing?
Okay, well, we have Greencorps, www.greencorpschicago.org. That's one way to find us on, and usually we'll be out in the community. So if you see like the Greencorps sign like that, and it has like all the we have little safety vests, you might see us. So we're working in the Emerald South area, which is the Washington Park area. We're working on the west side in the middle, the Madison-Pulaski corridor. We're also working, like I said, in Inglewood in the park districts. But like I said, greencorpschicago.org. You can find us. But we are housed at the CCGT, which is the Chicago Center for Green Technology.
We built this podcast out of a theory versus practice question.
Okay.
Joy and I are.
And she's going to hit you with it.
Throughout your education, there's a lot of theory that we learn. And we want to put it into practice. But we know it's a much more complex question than that. The two are intertwined so much. And there's a next step. You know, what do you say with theory, practice? What is that next level?
The next step is called application. And that's what we learn. We learn theory, we learn practicum, and we learn application. I'm gonna say my little example that I told Joy is just like we all had shop. I went to Chicago High School of Agricultural Science, and a lot of my friends went to CVS and these trade kind of based schools. And like we had the shops where you did the mechanics with the cars, and it's cool. And I've done it. You have a car that you pull in, and it's 70, 80 degrees in the shop. You're changing a tire. You got the little wheel well and the wrench and stuff like that. It's perfect controlled environment. But that's not how life happens. Everybody knows.
30 degrees.
30 degrees, right? There's 30 hours. But what I'm saying is that you on 290, coming home from a party, or kicking it, and you
got your nice shoes on, right?
Right. December, you got your Stacey Adams on, you got your Ferragamos on, or you guys got y'all Louboutins, or your stilettos on, and you get a flat tire. You're not trying to wait on the Minutemen from the state to come. It's 30, degrees outside with a wind chill of minus 15. It's snowing. It's 2:00 in the morning, and now you got to change the flat tire. So now how do you deal with so you have to rely on those theories and that practice that you did, but how do you apply those things? Can you remember what to do? Can you remember how to be safe? Can you remember these things? So I'm in terms of the applicationist. So how do we apply these theories and these principles? And I know all of us are I would consider myself a practicing academic because I teach, but I also am in the field. How do we apply these principles? How do we use these principles? Like data. I have with my colleagues, I always have this argument about data. Data is good, but guess what? When you look at data, what you're looking at? You're looking at people, or you're looking at incidents. So you have to take the data, the whole meso or the macro data, and micro analyze it to understand the people. So if you do that, that's the whole gamut. That's the micro, that's the macro, the meso, and the micro. You have to take all that into consideration.
Synthesize it. Yeah,
right,
I love exactly. It. I have a quiz for you.
Okay.
Amy failed earlier. Do you remember the movie Silkwood with Cher?
I
And
wasn't there.
Cher was a research microscopist. That was my first job with my degree in biology.
Oh,
I was
wow.
a research microscopist.
Okay.
And while I was a research microscopist, which was kind of the lowest job at this research firm,
Okay.
I went back to Governor State University to earn my master's degree in environmental biology and had wonderful experience at Governor State University. That was my first time in a helicopter, not a plane, but a helicopter, very different. We were studying cattle, doing some things like that. So you're right. I mean, you really have to be able to activate this stuff. You have to synthesize this information, get your hands dirty, literally.
Yes.
Right. I was out there chasing voles and things like that. So it was amazing. But GSU, they still have that wonderful program. But also we have a STEM camp every summer for, I think, age 9 all the way to 18. They make robots. They do a lot of coding, but it's a wonderful program. And we service all the local schools in the South suburb. So it's wonderful. So, I mean, we need more programs like what we're doing at GSU and what you're doing. But I have a final question for you. But because we talked about so much, to talk about that connection between that social justice, STEM, and how is our basic responsibility as good citizens.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you like because I have to rely on my grandparents. My grandfather taught me something at a very early age. 4 things, basic things: land, man, plan, then the claim.
Oh, say that again, Drew.
Land, if you believe in creation or if you believe in evolution. What came first? The land came first. And then after the land came first, the man came second. After the man came, then you had the plan. That's the geography. And then after you planned it, I know some of us did it backwards, but then you created a family, which is the clan.
Wow.
So all those are intersecting with each other, right? So the land is what? Geography. The man is what? Psychology, sociology. The plan is pretty much is intertwined with the sociology and the ethnography. And then the clan is actually the sociology. How do we, the society, how do we socialize our kids? How do we socialize with each other? How do we teach? So all those 4 concepts. So that's kind of how you kind of put everything together. We have to eat, okay? Eating is essential. And it's gonna come a time where, we may not have the genetically modified stuff. We may have to go right back to where we're doing the gathering and learning how to be sustainable and learning how to actually grow our own food. So how we put everything together, how we teach is you teach according to our history. How do we evolve to where we're at now? We weren't eating cereal. Well, the cereal we were eating was like oatmeal, or maize or something like that. We weren't eating Captain Crunch and Frosted
Fruit Loops.
Or Fruit Loops, right? You know what I'm saying? We really have to go back to an essence of simplicity, but also the complexity of the simplicity, meaning understanding how in teaching our children, teaching the next generation. So have that intergenerational wealth, but health, but that knowledge is that we have lost a lot of institutional knowledge. And what I mean is institutional knowledge about humanity. I have another saying is that a lot of us, I've been fortunate enough to be able to understand who I am and where I come from. And because of who I am and I come from, then I do the work. And then once I do the work, then guess what I can do? I can be. And I can be the best human being from being able to know who I am, done the work. And then you have that, like you said, good stewards of not only each other, but of the planet too.
Joy and I are both teacher educators.
Okay.
We are in higher ed, in educator preparation, and we always want to make sure to speak to the educators out there, whether they are high school teachers, administrators, counselors. And for so long, college has been that traditional way. And of course, we want to welcome students to our university, but we want to welcome them when they're ready at any point in their lives, whether it's right out of high school, as a career change, whatever point they decide higher education is for them. I want to get your thoughts or see if you have some advice for counselors or high school teachers to help them see that there are alternate ways to work and while also gaining an education. What would you tell them about these different pathways? What are those last tips that you would share with them?
Authenticity, I believe, is being authentic with people, being authentic with the students. Because sometimes students say, this is what I got to do. And sometimes, number one, you got to meet them where they're at. Okay, you have to meet them. Okay, they may not be ready, but if you give them enough advice and be very authentic, I'm gonna go say what my granddad used to tell me. He would say this, and I never understood this till I got grown. He would say, intimacy without authenticity is seduction. And a lot of these students feel like they're being seduced to do something.
Right, you're right.
Because they don't feel the intimacy.
You're not part of the process.
Part of the process. And they say, okay, trust the process. But you ask them to trust something, but they're not involved in it. You're not asking them, okay, what do you think? What do you feel? What's going on with you? So they're being seduced into these situations, and it's like, and then they follow the lead, trust the process, but they're not part of the process, and then they don't understand the process. So then you throw them out there, and then they end up failing and falling down. And it's like, and then you look at them and see, I told you. No, you have to build trust. So that's why I say you got to be intimate with the students, get to know them, whether they're 80, whether they're however age they are, but you have to be authentic. I didn't like college until grad school. That's when I really got into like, oh my God, I'm having fun in the community, this and that. My grad school professors, they became intimate with me. They started understanding. We started having conversations. They said, this is the why, this is this is that. This is the who, what, when, where, and why. But we always leave out the why, and then we never tell them that the how is gonna come, but you gotta figure out the why first.
Right, that's really powerful. Every 18-year-old coming out of high school is not ready to go to college. And oftentimes, especially if you're an educator or we push our kids to college and they're not ready and they're not successful. So that readiness is not just about academics, right? You need to whole buy-in and you need to know how it's going to impact you. So that's something that's powerful for anyone that's a parent.
Right, which I am too. I know you guys are too. Right.
But it has been wonderful talking to you, Dr. Drew, the philosopher, the scientist, the activist.
Thank you.
We have learned their wisdom, which is pretty amazing. You talked about the why. It's got to be the why of your life.
Right.
And how it relates to you. And what you've talked about today is just so enlightening and inspiring. And I know our listeners will be inspired as well.
Continue to do all the amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Teaching and Leading with Dr. Amy and Dr. Joy. Visit our website at govst.edu/Teaching and Leading Podcast to see the show notes from this episode.
We appreciate Governor State University's work behind the scenes to make publishing possible. Stay tuned for more episodes with Dr. Amy and Dr. Joy.